let's begin, shall we? Take it away, DB.
Welcome to today's edition of the Anaglyph Jukebox. You never know what you'll find on the old jukebox. Let's press B31. Okay, we've got Forbidden 3D, the tale of Dr. Frederick Berkman. The greatest villain in comic book history? The Joker, Dr. Doom, Lex Luthor, the Green Goblin, Dr. Sivana, Magneto, Darkseid, Loki, Thanos, Bane, Ultron, the Red Skull. A good case could be made for every one, and the Anaglyph Jukebox is here to tell you you'd be wrong each time. The greatest villain in comic book history is Frederick Berkman, author of Seduction of the Innocent. He was responsible, more than any other single person, for an industry-wide collapse that drove scores of artists and writers into other fields back in the 1950s. How bad was it? There were 650 different titles published in 1954. 2 years later, that number dropped to 250. More than 800 people lost their jobs, according to David Haju in The 10-Cent Plague. Ray Zone did 3D process separations for over 150 comic books, but he wrote just one. This one, Forbidden 3D, with art by Chuck Roblin, including a gorgeous painted cover. I believe Ray felt that as a fan and historian of both comics and 3D, this was an important story to tell. Among Berkman's claims, crude female nudes were hidden in drawings of mussels and tree bark. Today we'd recognize this as pareidolia, like seeing a horsey up in the clouds. Wonder Woman is a lesbian into bondage. Bondage, yes. Lesbian, no. She had a boyfriend. Batman and Robin are gay. Okay, that one is true. Superman is an alien fascist. All right, that one is true too. Damn. In 1954, as a court-appointed paid psychiatric expert in a gang-related trial for the Brooklyn Thrill Killers, the 18-year-old gang leader admitted to reading pornographic comic books, the infamous Tijuana Bibles. These are not the comic books sold on newsstands to the general public, remember. Berkman's unsupportable conclusion was that the young man had been corrupted by comics and they were to blame for his crime. He made no distinction between the clandestinely printed and distributed Tijuana Bibles and the mainstream comic book industry. In addition to resulting in the creation of the industry's self-policing Comics Code Authority, more than 100 acts of legislation were introduced on the state and municipal levels to ban or limit the sale of comic books. Specific comic book titles, using words like terror or zombies, were outlawed in New York, Connecticut, Maryland, and other states, and ordinances to regulate comics were passed in dozens of cities. 3 superheroes survived: a fascist, a faggot, and a dyke. Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. But only because they generated so much cash outside the comic book field in merchandising rights. 56 years after his bombshell of a book was published, Berkman's manuscript collection at the Library of Congress was unsealed in 2010. Carol Tilley, a University of Illinois librarian and information science professor, undertook the task of evaluating his research. Her conclusions, published in 2012, were withering. Quote, Berkman manipulated, overstated, compromised, and fabricated evidence, especially that evidence he attributed to personal clinical research with young people, for rhetorical gain. In addition, Berkman used a non-representative sample of young people who were already mentally troubled. He misrepresented stories from colleagues as being his own experiences. Berkman manipulated statements from adolescents by deliberately neglecting some passages while rewriting others so that they better suited his absurdly reductionist thesis: comic books cause juvenile delinquency. In other words, Carol Tilley revealed Seduction of the Innocent to be a hack job, a screed that whipped up a national moral panic unsupported by any facts. Hey, 1950s, paranoid much? In 1959, Wertham tried to sell a book about the harmful effects of television on children. The War on Children. He failed to find a publisher. Was Wertham's last book an apologia to the industry he had nearly destroyed? In The World of Fanzines, 1974, he wrote that fanzines were a, quote, constructive and healthy exercise of creative drives. This book led to an invitation for Wertham to address the New York Comic Art Convention. He was met with suspicion and heckled. He never wrote about comic books again.
That was great. Do you know where he ended up, Joe? Where that guy? Oh, you can't answer now. Well, I'd save it for the after party. Or can you?
He retired. His reputation much diminished, and he has since passed away.
Well,
No longer with us.
very interesting. Where was he from? Did you know where in the United States?
I believe he's a European immigrant, but I would have to double check that. But his career was in New York City.
Gotcha. I figured we could all.
And because he was in a media center, I believe the first came to national prominence with an article in like a national magazine like McCall's or a popular weekly or monthly that read his comic books called JD.
Could you imagine? They probably got him hidden somewhere so no one desecrates his grave. Imagine like making, guys who can draw comic strips your enemy. How's that going to work out, man? Could you imagine what they would draw on the stone? Anyway.
Well, he has been much pilloried, particularly in underground comics. They've made a lot of fun of Dr. Frederick Berkman in underground comics, for sure. And of course, whenever you look at moral panics from a distance, they seem ridiculous. But let's say that in the 1950s there was the threat of nuclear war, there was the Cold War, there was a lot of political turmoil and strife. Maybe it wasn't in the forefront of the news, but it certainly existed in that time. And I think societal problems then, as now, are sometimes scapegoated. John, you know what's wrong with your grandchildren? TikTok. Now, 50 years ago, we would have said, John, you know what's wrong with your grandchildren? They're reading comic books.
Our pal, Paul Hutchins, is up next. Paul lives in the UK and has taken us on several great vacations that he's recorded with his stereo cameras. And we are delighted to have him back today.
Well, these photos are not this year's summer holiday because most of us have not been able to have any because of COVID, etc. These were some shots taken in Madeira a few years ago. Madeira is a small island off the west coast of Africa, about 300 miles west of Morocco, and on the same sort of latitude or longitude horizontally as South Carolina. So it's quite a temperate climate. It's very nice. And these are some traditional houses on the north part of the island, made of straw.
Now, Madeira is where now?
It's to the west coast of Africa.
Oh, wow.
About 300 miles west of Morocco. It's a Portuguese island. It's not a colony. It's classified as part of Portugal. It has a population of about 300,000, and it's about 32 miles long and about 20 miles deep. And it's popular for tourism and wine, fortified wine, Madeira cake, and fresh food.
And how far is this location from the actual the main city? Then is this all...
It's probably about an hour's drive. Some hills in the centre part of the island, so you have to go over the hills to get to this part. So it's on the northeastern coastline.
And what is that house? What is that?
Yeah, it's a traditional house. I think they're preserved. That they're sort of old houses, so there's no one lives in them now. They're made of straw and they have a steep angle to the roof for it does rain, so it's to help the rain run off quickly. And the top floor, sort of like an attic room, would have been for keeping keeping stores in, and then the living space was underneath there.
Do you recall what that front's made out of? Where the ladies, where the entrance is? What that's made of? Is that's
Well, it's straw really. I mean, straw roof, but I think it's sort of maybe mud. It won't be brick, I don't think.
interesting?
And this is again on the north coast. It's got some spectacular scenery overlooking the North Atlantic here.
Oh, that's the North Atlantic. Okay.
Yeah. One of the highest points on the island, this one.
The highest point on the island. Interesting.
Here's a fresh fruit market in the capital city called Funchal. Funchal is where the airport is, and where it's got a harbour where cruise liners call, so it's a very popular destination. People go here for a day or 2 days, and then cruise on to other islands like Tenerife, etc., and Lanzarote.
Now that's an interesting souvenir to pick up in Orange.
Yeah,
Big oranges.
yeah. Madeira and bananas are actually wonderful. They're very small ones and very sweet. And because of some quirky legislation because it's in the EU, they're not allowed to export them. So they're just grown for domestic consumption.
That was going to be my next question. You know,
It's a shame because they're really tasty.
Yeah, packing a bag of those and trying to get past, that little box you always got to check off. Not bringing fruits and vegetables. I guess you got,
Yeah. Have you packed this fruit salad yourself, sir, when you come to check in? Okay, now the irrigation of the island are on drainage channels around, almost like contour lines, called levadas. And you can walk along these, which is an easy walk because it's mostly downhill, very slow angle. And these some of the views you can get going round on these levada walks.
2 questions. What camera? Do you recall what camera you were using?
Yeah, this was a W1 actually, my first stereo camera.
Do you fly because it's off the coast? Do you fly in or do?
Yeah, you fly in. Yeah, it was probably about 4 hours from the UK. Very pleasant flight. They had to extend the airport a few years ago because it was very short, and it was one of the most dangerous airports in the world for landing and taking off because it was very short. But they added an extra 2 kilometers, and it's okay now.
Yeah, that's a great reason to take a steamship in there, to take a boat in there, or a cruise. Yeah. Hong Kong used to be like that too. I haven't been there in a while, but the plane just drops, man, out of the sky. It's terrifying.
Okay, now these are not Madeira. These last 2 are in actually Croatia. Yes, Croatia, on the eastern side of the Adriatic Sea, opposite Italy, and some wonderful walking trails in Croatia, this is one of them.
And this was again on a guided tour?
It was a guided tour, yeah, of a British company, but there were many North Americans, Canadians, and 2 wonderful elderly New York ladies who are a bundle of fun.
And now, where in Croatia is this?
This is it's north of Dubrovnik, considerably north, probably about 100 miles north.
Now, how do you arrive at this location?
Yep. Well, you get to this location. We stayed in a resort on the sea, and then coached to here, and then walked. But to get to Croatia, there are a number of airports. Capital city Zagreb, Dubrovnik, and another airport in Split. But we went to Dubrovnik and then had a 4-hour drive north through parts of Bosnia-Herzegovina, which is being given access to the sea on a small strip.
Now, where everyone is standing, did you head back down that trail, or did you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why walking poles are a good idea.
Oh, walking poles. I was going to say, do they pick you up at the end of that trail, or you got to hump back up?
No. We were picked up at the end. Actually, walked down to a lake, and then got a boat, and the boat took us to a port where the coach was waiting.
That makes sense.
It was really good.
That makes sense because that looks like that could be a problematic climb back up.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you see. The older I get, the more I look at things like that.
Yeah.
How do you get out?
It's easy going down.
Well, always easy going down. And is this along that same trail?
That's along the same trail. That's right. So you see the lake just at the bottom left, and that's where we walked down to a series of zigzag routes, a bit hair raising at times. and then got the boats which took us down through that canyon, I suppose, to the sea at the end.
Do you bump into locals on this trail, or just this
No.
is kind of no?
Oh,
No, the locals
well,
aren't walking exactly.
Yeah, not on this one, but we did come across a deserted village, which had been semi-ruined, and we thought it was due to the war that had occurred, in the early 1990s, but it wasn't. It had been destroyed 30 years ago in an earthquake. And while it was a Sunday, while we were there, some locals came up in battered old cars to use the playground to play their pool games on it, which was quite good.
Wow.
We watched them.
Do you get any shots of that?
Yes.
Yeah,
I haven't
yeah.
got them here, but I have
No,
got,
it's okay.
yeah.
For future. Now I'll have to figure out what the gallery will be for that one.
Mike's asked how long the walk was. Probably 4 or 5 hours. So up to 7 or 8 miles, I should think, with stop for breaks and lunch and stuff, and so sightseeing.
Obviously, they tell you what to pack, right? They tell you pack water, pack this, pack that, right?
Oh, definitely. And we're actually led as well. So we're not doing it ourselves. There's a leader who's showing the way and has his own map, etc. Right. Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you once again. That was great. Yeah. I'll have to figure out what the gallery will be to get the shot of playgrounds of the world, I guess. Maybe is that going to be That's pretty amazing. No, that is fascinating. I love these little travelogues we do. It's great.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Appreciate it very much. Okay. Now we're going to head on to, give me one moment while I reshare you. We're going to welcome Sam Tresser IV. This year, he finished his debut feature film, which you're going to hear much more about in a few moments. And I plan to be at the film festival coming up on October 2nd at the Midway Theater in Queens, New York. That is if I survive after this coming week, where we'll be working with Coldplay at the Apollo Theater in Harlem, Billie Eilish and Governor's Ball. And if that don't do it, Global Citizens Concert next Saturday in Central Park. Add that up, it's probably more than 50,000 or more people. Needless to say, I'll be giving my Moderna a run for its money. I'll be sure to share some backstage 3D with you all. Hopefully not the stereo gallery of what took out Johnny Laser. But don't worry about me, the devil takes care of his own. And anyway, I survived swimming in the East River in the 1960s. That prepares your immune system for anything, I assure you. Now back to Samuel. Samuel Tresser IV is based here in New York. He sits on the advisory board of Stevenson University's Film and Moving Image Department. He's worked in several areas of production and was the writer of a film column in the Frederick News Post. This year he finished his debut feature 3D film, Leda. It's a dialogue-free reimagining of the Greek myth, Leda and the Swan. We're going to begin his presentation with a quick look. And I should have stopped sharing, so my pal can there. I'll come back a second. Like I said, we're going to begin the presentation with a quick look at a 2D teaser for the movie. Also, just as a reminder, the first few slides are also in 2D. The images from the actual movie are in 3D. You'll see that a little bit later. And I take it away, DB. is so creepy. 2D, 3D, 5D, don't matter to me. I'm in. I can't wait to see that. You creeped me out. You did it. All that fancy film school stuff. You learned well, man. It went in and you went against the grain. I love it all, man. I really do. I'm already in. I love it. So, okay, I'm going to. Oh yeah, man. I wish you.
It's been quite a journey getting that far. So, cool guys. So I'll just jump on in here. I'm Sam Tresser. I'm based in New York now, originally from Maryland, and in 2 weeks from now, we finally premiere the 3D film that we're talking about, which took from conception 8 years up till now to create. And basically, everyone in the industry I talked to was asking me, why the hell are you thinking of making your first movie in 3D? Let alone a period piece, let alone without dialogue, let alone with so many animals and stuff. All the things they say not to do as your first movie. We basically did it, and we did it in 3D. I see Dave just shared the link to the screening. So just in the beginning, we'll just plug it. October 2nd, noon, UA Midway in Queens as part of the Festival of Cinema NYC. And then if anyone's out in Buffalo, October 8th at 3 p.m. as part of Buffalo International Film Fest is when we're screening it. So anyway.
Yeah, please go ahead. I'm wondering how you find those theaters that are willing to do stuff.
Well, that's been like, so from the head of the project, it was like, having a 3D film is kind of a huge potential draw because, it's a whole nother tool in our toolbox, if you will, of telling a story through depth is kind of why I initially wanted to make a film in 3D. Like, I think, okay, so yeah, we'll talk about those books I showed. I started without any knowledge of 3D really. I thought it was cool. I ended up partnering with a guy that had several cameras, and I figured he's got enough cameras for it. Why don't we just try to tell the story with some depth? And so this is the image you're looking at with this depth map is basically from the left of the screen to the right of the screen is the linear timeline of the film. And then the chart is how deep I want it to go. And it's a story of that revolves around some psychosis and stuff. And so as the character loses touch with other characters and with reality in general, I wanted to pull her away from her environment. So there's almost a subliminal effect on the viewer using the 3D so that we can kind of relate to her visually. And maybe we don't even actually know that that's what we're feeling, but that was the intention initially. And so this was at the very beginning of the film. We wrote the script and I made a depth map. And then I tried to start reaching out to people that actually knew what the hell they were doing. I looked at these books. I found one by Ray Zone and I read through that. I was trying to find, like, I'm kind of a mathematical guy. So I was trying to find like a mathematical rule of thumb that I could just use to make all this make sense. And, there's the rule of 30 and such. And it started all very, very precise and lined out. And what you learn pretty quickly when you're making movies is everything kind of goes to shit pretty quick. But I did manage to connect through several different people to Vince Toto. He's a stereographer out in Los Angeles. These are some of the films that he's done stereo on. And, I came into this film thinking so big, like, oh, we're going to like have a stereographer. We're going to shoot it all in 3D on Steadicam, have all this motion shots and stuff. And first of all, Vince came in with a really reasonable budget, but it was way out of my price range. So fortunately, Vince agreed to kind of be a consultant on the film. So as I made my storyboards and as I made my depth map and everything, he looked at it, he looked at our test shots, he looked at some of our rushes and kind of just coached me through the whole process. So that was super helpful. And then me and my AC Spencer Grundler on the set, we kind of took over on-set stereography. So let's see what we got next. I think we get into, oh, go ahead, yeah.
Well, question for you. When did you first experience 3D? Did you start with like Viewmaster reels, or what got your curiosity?
Yeah,
initially?
I was trying to think of the answer to that, and because like I had worked at another job, I was learning After Effects and stuff, and I thought it was cool to make some things animated in 3D. And there's always been kind of this, I've always thought like 3D on a 2D plane is just a super cool illusion. I think it really relates back to when I was like 8 years old or something. I had a vision test, and they gave me Anaglyph glasses, and they had a book, and they told me to pinch the butterfly's wing. And I kept trying to pinch it because I could see it floating there, but I couldn't pinch it. And that's just like one of those little childhood moments that has always stuck with me. And I guess that was the root of me having this nerdy fascination with 3D. And now it's kind of derailed my life in a certain way.
But you couldn't grab the wings. This is my thinking. So
Right.
Interesting. Okay. And so now you get out of film school.
Right. Get out of film school, make a few shorts, constantly wanting to make my feature. And then my writing partner presents this idea of Leda the Swan, which he had done a painting of. I thought it was a pretty cool concept because, you know, it relates to kind of our relationship to divinity and that versus like the tangible reality. Also potentially exploring the strange but very common pregnancy in general, I guess. And also I just went into exploring loneliness, isolation, and made it a story of kind of madness, like what happens when you get pregnant or you think you're pregnant by a god. And then yeah, I wanted to make a story, to try to tell a story without just talking. You know, they always say show, don't tell. So we decided at first we were going to do a ballet, but nobody knows how to do a ballet, and that'd be dumb anyway because I'm a filmmaker. So we decided to make the story without dialogue and replace the dialogue instead with the 3D depth. So we're still having the same amount of tools, but just trying to figure out a different way to tell a story.
That's a great. All those answers were phenomenal. It's really gives us insight to your thinking. I'm going to move along on the technical.
Yeah, we can move on because.
But I want to go back to this when we get to the film. In other words, that I'm sorry I jumped into that a little early. So I'm going to. Let's go through the technical, and right before we do the film, I want to dig in a little bit more about how you got to this position and your thought process, because I really, it's very interesting.
Yeah, that was a lot of conceptual, and then we had to figure out how to actually pull it off, obviously. And you know, reading those books, you know, there's like a lot of those books they were older gear and everything, and I'm using like modern cinema red technology, and it's all the same rules, obviously. And so then it was just learning the equipment and starting to do research, because not many people when I was doing this were doing this kind of level of 3D production, especially like at an independent level. It was either like major motion pictures or kind of DIY, and I was trying to find the middle ground. So on the left there, you see the 3Reality TS5. This was like the dream rig I wanted to get, but I think that was like upwards of, or it was like 60 grand and plus, and I couldn't afford to rent it. So I ended up buying the one on the right, which is the Genesis Hurricane. That was like, you know, 4 or 5 grand. I bought that, started doing some tests with it, and I realized it was just way too flimsy. I couldn't lock anything in, especially like some of these shots I had to do match motion, or I wanted to do sky replacement, which you'll see in a couple of shots later on. And so I really needed something that I could match the cameras, have like everything locked in, even move the camera at times and not have the camera shakings. And so some of these smaller rigs like the Genesis was just a failure. I learned some basics, but I had to upgrade. And so if you want to throw in the video of, this is a Cinegears rig, which was like a step up from the Genesis Hurricane. Not this one, but there's a video that you'll actually see me tweaking. Video,
okay. You know what? Let's walk through this and then finish with the, yeah. So I think go ahead.
So okay, it's all good. Basically, the story is we got the Cinegears rig. It also started failing because we were doing top-down shots, and
you took care of me. And, and name this one again. This is the.
So this is the Cinegears 3D rig, and this is what we thought we were going to be shooting the whole film with. Invested in this guy, and then as soon as we did anything that wasn't just tripod based, like when we're shooting straight down from above and stuff, the top camera, basically this design, the two cameras separate or converge simultaneously to keep like the center balance. And then the top camera does a toe in to do your convergence. but the toe-in plate was just not really designed for such a heavy camera. And so then the gentleman that I partnered up with that had all the gear, he had a friend with a CNC machine, and they ended up wanting to have a fun weekend and try to design a rig, basically out of, I guess, aluminum, that would be kind of just hardcore, heavy duty, and anything we put in it wasn't going to shift. And so that's what the rest of the pictures are that we're going to go to.
Now, if you don't mind, you could just kind of take us around a little bit on this thing, because for most people, this looks like a pile of stuff.
Right. So
let's look very simple. Where are the cameras? Let's begin to show people, like, could you...
so you see on the top with the A, that's our A camera, or the bottom.
Up to the top, there we go. That's the...
Yeah, so that's our left camera up there. That's our left eye. And then on the bottom, that's our right eye.
Now, is there a reason? Because it says R on the top. Was that just a AR? Was that...
Actually, I guess the top was our right eye. I think we kind of switched between rigs.
Please. No problem at all.
But so the top camera, they're both on pretty much matching plates, but the top camera has an extra knob that lets it rotate on the, I guess it would be the Z axis, to do the convergence once you get their interocular separated.
And the convergence is done, well, which knob?
I believe that's the little red knob underneath the camera there. You'll see me tweaking it if you play the video. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you can hear me saying I'm going to converge a little closer.
And how are you making your mind up there to converge?
So basically, when we did our shot list and we did like kind of our whole plan for the script, I went through and scene by scene, I gave like a number value between 1 to 10, which applied both into our lighting contrast, how dark the darks would be versus the lights, and then also the 3D depth, how deep it was going to be. And so when we would get on the set with our shot list, we would have, this shot's an 8. And basically that became like 80% of full convergence for the film. And in the end, we were viewing it in Anaglyph Red and Blue 3D on a monitor on the rig. And honestly, in the end, our deciding point, or our frame of reference, became like the edge of our paper glasses here. I don't know if, I guess you're looking at the screen, but yeah, we had our stereo paper glasses, and just that little square edge kind of became our 5% of the screen.
Interesting. And just do me a favor, take me just to one place, the first day.
Yeah.
Okay, take me to the first day when you got all the shit set, the highly technical equipment. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got it all set up, and you're ready to roll. Now, what was that now? Because now you got to make some commitment, right? Because that's a commitment at that point in terms of your convergence and what you're doing with the 3D, right?
Right.
From that point forward, it kind of makes a big difference. Well,
that's totally true. And we had it all planned out in this huge plan. And then with this film being an independent film, one of the biggest hurdles becomes the funding. And so because we were like raising funds, shooting a couple of days, raising funds, shooting a couple of days, production took over 12 months. And during those 12 months, the script got rewritten 3 times. And so basically our whole plan and that whole depth map kind of went to shit. I mean, it still followed the same flow, but now we have flashbacks that I shot in 2D, and we did a recessed 2D, so it looks more like you're looking at a picture in a frame, which I hope automatically shows the viewer like, oh, it's a flashback that we're in, so we're not bouncing around, There are several different things, all changed throughout, but majoritively, the intense parts are still the intense parts, which need more depth, and vice versa.
And that depth map you showed up, the graph, how did you determine that? Was that from reading the books? And how are you thinking? Is that just a...
So the depth map was actually determined more based on the plot of the story and the mental state of the main character. This is all centered around Leda. We're kind of voyeuristically watching her as she slowly deteriorates mentally. And so that map was supposed to follow her in her journey, I guess. And then we took that and turned it into a technical thing. So I tried to make it less technical than kind of paint the picture through technicality.
So there was that point, particularly in 3D, it does that to you, right? There's that point to where you have the idea on paper, but now you have to kind of release that mentally and start to create based on your own intuition, right?
Most definitely. So, and by the time we were a third or halfway through the film, we basically, had our number, referencing numbers and stuff, but it was much more intuition. We're on set and we're like, this feels like it needs to be a little bit more this way or that way. And obviously, now the big deciding factor is, what is this going to look like on a big screen? Because obviously, depending on projection, depending on what you're watching it, the depth is going to change a lot. So we theoretically constantly thinking this is planned to be on a massive theatrical screen. So play with that in mind, even though you're watching it on a 7-inch monitor while you're shooting it. So we're all going to be in for a surprise to see if it actually worked.
That's great. I can't tell you I love you enough. Now, what did you do for the dailies? How'd you do with that? Did you look at them polarized, or how did you do the dailies?
So we actually had both cameras sent and mux the signal on set, so we had a live Anaglyph feed on the rig. So we would basically, the DP would set up his shot as a 2D shot, and then me and the AC would go in and we would line up the 3D, get the interocular right, get the convergence right, all based on the Anaglyph 2D signal, which was nice because we could put on the glasses and view it in 3D, or we could take off the glasses and see specifically how much parallax there is in the background and stuff just by seeing where the lines diverge. And I actually had I think it was a 2% or a 5% grid on the thing, so I could see where we're breaking it, theoretically breaking it.
Yeah, I know what you, because I actually use the monitor with a little, I figured out how to do, just take a ruler and I would measure my,
exactly,
and just kind of go, I know I'm safe, and do because it's very complicated that way. Most people don't realize that. You got to really shoot for your screen.
Right, most definitely. And that was the big mystery, and it's still the mystery. So yeah, I'm excited. But that's what I was saying. It basically became the edge of these glasses was our breaking point. So we just kept putting those up against it by the end of the thing. It got dirtier and dirtier. That's good.
Yeah. Look, hey fellas, everybody, I'm giving this 5 stars right now. I haven't seen it. He's getting 5 stars, man. I insist you go and buy it. Well, now we'll get to that, how to get hold of this afterwards. But that's great. That's all great information. Let me go back to the.
Yeah, so we can show a few pictures of the final rig we ended up with, and I just wanted to kind of.
That one you just showed. Excuse me. That one you just showed the camera. So you were not able. That only shot certain scenes. I mean, that
shot our first 3 days, and we were like, this isn't gonna be able to really pull us through the whole shoot. We had a couple shots that were failed because they were straight down shots, and after locking everything, it just got loose, and it wasn't. We just couldn't rely on it. So that's when we ended up getting this big bad boy. We were working in association with a rental house that I was kind of giving my time to run the rental house in order to get gear rentals, some of these sacrifices you make in the independent cinema world, or trades rather than sacrifices.
Who'd you rent it off of?
So it's called Archive Media. A friend of mine, an executive producer on the film, Mike Peters, has a bunch of this equipment, and it was him and his friend Paul that actually designed this rig, this big cage. And it was a workhorse, but god damn it if it wasn't heavy. Yeah, look at that. That's Mike in the background. That's Nick Midwig, our DP. And so this was basically the same thing. I actually hacked the mirror off of the Genesis rig that I already had, which is the 50% mirror. And then this rig really defined the film in the end, because built out, it was about 70 pounds. So, it's like we're in the old silent movie era where you have 100-pound cameras and you're very limited in how you're moving them around. Most people today barely use a tripod, but we were either on a tripod or a slider, or later you'll see, this is us taking it to the water. It takes 2 guys to move this thing around.
Take it to the water. I love it. You guys got both.
Yeah, I just try to go all out and see how badly I get punished for it. But this is my DP in the AC, and yeah, my DP Nick was kind of always trying to convince me, why are we doing it in 3D? Why are we doing 3D? Or just convert it or something if you really need it in 3D. But he was a trooper and managed to pull through. So we take it out to the water, and you can see us. We have a slider rig out in the water. I think is the next one. So we actually have this suspended upside down on the slider to try to get as close as we can to the water. And I think you'll see the shot that this made. This is when we do her walking on water. We'll see that a little later. But yeah, so Nick was basically have to come up with the most creative ways he could think of to get this thing to actually have some motion, so we could also, have the depth, but move through the depth as much as possible. And it kind of gives the whole film this weight and this slowness that it added to the story in its own way.
Where were you shooting this?
We were shooting this all in Maryland. So we rented several different mansions around Maryland, old turn of the century mansions, and a little bit on my parents' farm, a little bit on a friend's farm. This was a random lake or a random pond that a friend of mine used to rent the house, but by the time we shot it, he didn't anymore. So I had to track down the owners.
Wow.
Yeah, we can move on ahead. So that's the swing we made. There's a kind of a big climax at the end, and we wanted to have as much motion as possible. So Nick figured out how to rig up this swing where he could just swing it all around. And yeah, it was nuts, but it was a pretty fun day. We had to get super creative. It was tough.
It's amazing.
So this is our poster. You'll see it's just recessed 2D on this guy, but that's Leda. That's the lead actress, Adeline Theory, who everyone involved with this film, they put in at least 4 years, if not up to 8, and so I can't thank enough everyone that helped out with the film. Adeline joined on thinking it was going to be a leading role just in a feature, and ended up becoming, helping me rewrite the script, helping me produce a lot of it, and just became like a huge teammate. So much more than just an actress, but she's still the star of the show. And I think, you'll see it's really her stage is the piece. She's in virtually every shot.
When did you decide no sound?
I
No
just
and dialogue.
I decided
dialogue. I meant dialogue.
Yeah. Because there is, you can't really call it a silent film because there's complete diegetic sound. There's breathing, there's footsteps, there's door slams and sound effects. But I wanted to. First of all, I just wanted to try to tell a story. Like I'm a big fan of silent film, and I'm a big fan of a lot of the techniques they use in telling their story. And I think we were on a trajectory of filmmaking just becoming this visceral, emotive and experiential thing. And then sound came into play, and it's we took a huge step back, and in a way,
that was a marketing thing though, Samuel,
mm-hmm.
when you called it silent movie.
Yeah.
That was to kill it. It was actually a melody movie.
Hey, yeah, right. Yeah, definitely, exactly.
Yeah, I know. That was my conclusion. It was just marketing. That's how you kill it. It's silent. Who wants silent? But please continue.
Yeah,
I agree with you. I agree with you. You're
right. I feel like the filmmakers that went from silent into sound became the strongest filmmakers in the early days, and I think once we hit the golden Hollywood era, we had lost a lot of the more experimental storytelling techniques. And so I hope that forcing myself to not have dialogue would help me to find some of those and find other creative ways, or at least have a different kind of cinematic experience relating to characters. And I think it's strange. I'm not sure exactly, what the success is, but I'm also way too close to the film to know anymore. So it's going to be exciting to hear people's reaction. Now we're into shots of the film.
Well, in terms of the soundtrack, how involved? You had to be very involved because that was an essential part, right? Now, so did you seek out composers? How did you do that?
Well, that was very interesting. Because it was, at first I was thinking we'll have this lavish soundtrack. It'll be kind of an ode to silent cinema. And I realized that at first, we had one composer. He composed a full score for the whole piece. We used some people that were on the Icelandic Symphony Orchestra, recorded a score with live strings. And it was really cool, but it almost like initially having it so filled with a score, it seemed like it was pulling us away from like the visual and the characters, and it almost seemed like it was drowning in music. And so I had to dial it back a lot. And that was Andre Barros. He made the original score, and then we had Bjorn Magnusson come on and make a more kind of a more electric modern score, and it ended up becoming a meshing of the two. But by the end, the score plays a lot bigger of a backseat, and the sound design became the real voice of the film. I mean, they're all meshed together, and I think we found a happy point. But getting there was very tough, you know.
Oh God, I can't. Please.
Because
But
the whole post process was ridiculous. But I basically handed the film as a completely silent film over to our post sound production team, who foleyed everything and made a bunch of ambient tracks, and then we laid some score elements on top of that as well.
How'd you find that team? How'd you?
They were local to me down in Maryland. I, knew them through a few other people, and they were kind of excited to jump on and do a film that they just start from scratch. It was basically like getting a cartoon or something,
And so, did they see the dailies or anything, or that you gave them? And how did they put? Because that's, I mean, the Foley I understand, but scoring it and all, it seems like that's fun. That's like a fundamental ingredient to what you've created. And so, how are you managing them? It's a long question to get to that. How are you managing all
yeah,
that?
it was tricky. So like I would at least the production sound team, I talked to them before and during while we were shooting and stuff, and it was basically a lot of communication, and then I send them. So this is one of like our more macro shots. I just tried to get a variety of different images here for you guys to see some of the different things that we did with the rig.
And
But
is that drop, obviously, does it drop in the shot?
oh yeah.
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
There's like a continuation of drops, or just that one drop?
Yeah, a couple drops. Um, but yeah, it was tough. It was just a lot of back and forth. I gave them the picture lock. They sent me a track. I said, I basically had to go in and sit with them through a lot of the mix and everything, which is, isn't uncommon. But this one was very, it's half the film is what it sounds like.
Right. And how did you? Yeah. So then, let me try to get. I know that the script took several rewrites, right? Took many rewrites. Did the score take as many rewrites? And that's the first thing, the score and all the Foley and all the soundscape they created. How many of those did you have to go through?
The score was really tough finding it. And I definitely lose my mind a little bit in the post process, picking and trying and starting over and blah, 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 blah. So the post process ended up taking 2 years between rewriting the whole film, like in the edits lab, and then, trying this score, trying that score, ripping all the score out, trying another score, and finding a mesh of all the two. So the whole process, I just felt like I was running blind in a way, like so well prepared. And then, in the end, you just find it as it comes. And I mean, my main goal was saying, just figure out how to finish the film. This is a shot where we had the camera upside down right on the water. An interesting thing about this shot is we shot a lot of the dream sequences in infrared. So I took the OLPF out of the camera, the optical low pass filter, and just shot it like wide open, full spectrum. And I think I might have put some IR pass filters on the front of the lenses, and which was super cool in theory, and it made it look super ghostly. And it's awesome when we did our 2D test. But as soon as I put it on the 3D rig, I realized that the 50% mirror beam splitter doesn't split VR properly. I mean, IR rather. And
Oh, sure. There's a landmine.
yeah, so I get one image that's like completely magenta and one image that's like completely like orange. And so one of the things, I mean, most of you will know that you have to have a completely matched image in order to get the 3D to work properly. And so that just became like kind of hell in the color, the post color world, trying to match these shots in the infrared.
It's a gorgeous shot, man.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's even more pretty when you get the close up and she turns around.
Why'd you have the rig upside down to get it close to the water?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Because we had like I guess 2 feet of clearance from the bottom of the rig, so we had to hang it upside down to get it right on the water.
And I mean, you must have waited a while to get the water to look so smooth. I mean, boy, oh boy.
Yeah,
What
we
is
had
she on, by the way? What is she stand on a pedestal out there?
well, yeah. I mean, if I tell you the trick, it's basically we built a 7-foot walkway that sits 1 inch under the water. 7 foot high, that is.
Hey, everybody, don't you love filmmakers? Don't you love them?
Yeah, it's all
This
the
guy,
things that nobody's gonna notice when they watch that shot. They go, oh, that's cool.
here it
Yeah.
is. Samuel's out there creating something, and no matter what it takes, it's going to happen, and it's incredible. Man, it's just great. Great work. Great work.
Thank you. So this is one of our sky replacement shots. I mean, you can see it's much more like kind of cardboardy to 2D, 3D, but you know, I just did a bunch of that in post, and then we have like the next shot's also another sky replacement shot where I was just trying to, you know, make these more surreal, dreamy vibes.
Yeah, few people notice those kind of esoteric, only 3D nerds, like super nerds, not even like regular ones. So yeah, I know what you're saying about the cardboardy, but it doesn't matter.
Oh yeah, no,
I'm absorbed into that shot.
Sure.
But I got your point. I'm like that too. I want it perfect, but the reality is
Sure.
nobody knows that shit.
And then, so this was a 3D shot, but the sky was, you know, completely blown out on that day. So I just went in there and worked a little bit of my own sky replacement magic. Fortunately, I know how to do a thing or two in compositing software, and threw a sky back there that kind of makes the whole shot pop.
Excellent.
I do see a question here, what they edited the 3D with. So I edited a 2D cut with one eye in Adobe Premiere, and then transferred it all over to DaVinci Resolve Studio. And DaVinci was, I mean, there was a lot of little shot for shot I would have to make corrections on kind of the sync, but it kind of did a full sweep for me initially, syncing up all my clips, and then I just had to go through and correct them. But DaVinci was a real pleasure to work with in 3D.
Now is that that was at a editing lab or something, right? Because that's a whole big system, the DaVinci system, right?
Yeah, I actually, well, I bought the DaVinci system so that I could also like, because I knew it was going to be a headache because my colorist hadn't worked with 3D before. So I got DaVinci so that I could transfer the project over and do all the 3D syncing initially. Then I sent the project to the colorist to do all the coloring on. And then I went to his office and sat on the project for 3 or 4 days and actually did all the alignment, the final alignment. Because I was basically, you know, had to be the stereo supervisor of the film because nobody else knew what the hell is going on. There's a test shot. That's me on set. You know, I was just trying to play around, having a little fun with the 3D.
No, it's great, man.
And the other thing was, you know, like my DP was, you know, formally trained DP. He's constantly trying to have his lenses wide open, get a real shallow depth of field. And so I'm constantly fighting him, trying to have like the deepest depth of field so that we can see the 3D. And, you know, there were just little things like this that like the 3D was outside of what we were all used to. And then we also didn't have tons of budget for lights, so we kind of met in the middle.
Yeah, so that's what happens when I, was out getting hired as a stereographer. That would always be the problem. The opposite of what you had. I would try to explain it to people because they wanted lens flare. They wanted all this. It's like, well, you see, it's try to explain to them why you've got lens flare in one lens and it's not in the other, and why that's going to be a problem. It is. Initially, they start out very confident in you, and by the time they're done, they just want to shoot it the way they want to shoot it. Yeah, what they're used to, they're accustomed to, and it's like
right, exactly.
And it is really delicate, and I must admit, I probably didn't have the patience that I could have had under those circumstances. But I understand the problem. I clearly understand it.
Mm-mm. Everyone was being patient. It was my baby, so you know, I was just grateful that everyone was still there.
Well, that you pulled all that off. Man, it's just everybody. That was just. Hold on a second. Where am I? I'm not on the screen anymore. Yeah, hold on a second. I'm enjoying this too much. There we go. I'm back on. No, that was incredible. That you pulled this up. I've been lucky lately. I've been bumping into such talented, wonderful people as yourself. I don't know what I've been doing, but I guess I got to keep doing it because this is. I'm thoroughly impressed. And anybody out there who's tried to shoot something in 3D, well, they're certainly, their hats are off to you, and especially the first time through. Man, this is going to make. I'm so glad I know you now, because I know eventually your number's going to change. You're not going to return my emails. You're going to be in the bubble because you are really talented. The fact that you got through all this tells me you have that creative ability, and I've been around enough folks like it, so I understand how that works, and it's incredible to get things done. It's particularly even worse now because it's 3D. So you have to convince these people, because you know you're right, and how to convince them and manage them. All talented people, and I know they listen to what you said, but you have that technique to learn that is almost more difficult than the 3D part. You know,
most definitely.
How to wring what you need out of people who are wonderful, who want to do you a favor. They want it to be right their way. So that's incredible. I'm thoroughly impressed.
It was a hell of a time, but I super appreciate you guys having me on here to talk about it, because I felt like I was in a desert of 3D with nobody else that was interested in it. So to find you guys has been a huge treat.
We share our oasis with you. You're welcome to drink from our pond. No, really, you're that's great.
Yeah, I hope I'll see some of you guys out at the premieres.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm sure some of these guys have been calling you to try to shoot movies, do a million other things. I know you're on my short list.
Awesome.
Oh yeah, God, I'm like for anything. Here's the point. Here's a guy who's got chops. Just look at those shots he's got already. Those are all wonderful. You're when did you graduate film school?
2008.
2008.
Yep. So not a spring chicken, but
no. What kind of shorts did you do?
I do a lot of kind of more conceptual based shorts, a lot of my own personal stuff. You can find me at samuelgrover.com if you want to see some of the more creative stuff I do. And then g-f-y.com to see kind of the little artistic business collaboration partnership I have up here in New York. Check it out.
Yeah, we should be. We'll certainly. I know this crowd is going to give big. Certainly, your phone's going to ring, and I really appreciate the time you spent with us. Stick around because there's going to be after party stuff. Oh, by the way, we're going to show some like the little first little thing in black and white where he explains the concept of wanting to shoot the movie and explains how he hooked the cameras up. It's really great. It's like a 5-minute thing. We're going to show that in the after party. I'm sure it's going to generate questions. I thank you. I'm going to probably take off the VR for a few minutes, and we're going to. Oh, here. Remember the hey, Englishman. Here we got a song for you because there's a ukulele on that spacecraft. So here. I'll see you guys next after the after party. But see you later. Take it away, DB.